players have made their way into the pavilion, and we can join Jonathan Agnew, who is out and about. Where are you, Jonathan?
I'll tell you where I am. I'm in the best seat in the house, is where I am. I'm absolutely on the balcony of the MCC President's box, so you're square onto the pitch. You almost feel as if you're part of it, actually, really part of the game. You always reach out and touch the players from this point. But, of course, I'm here as guest to visit the man who is literally lording over all that he surveys, the MCC President, Stephen Fry, an old friend of our programme, Stephen. And thanks for coming on to chat.
Oh, well, thank you for visiting me here. I still can't believe that I am President of the MCC. We own this ground. And, do you know, most presidents of the MCC, obviously, have been fine cricketers. There are three of them here. Mike Griffith used to play for Sussex. We've got Matthew Fleming, England and Kent. We had Roger Knight. They've all been here. They've all been fine cricketers. We've had Kumar Sangakkara, one of the greatest cricketers of all time. And then you've got me. But I like to think I am here to represent a very important part of cricket. That's people who can't and don't really play the game, but love it with every fibre of their being. I'm here to represent the crowd. I'm here to represent people who watch cricket and know they'll never get a chance to play on a ground like this or even any professional ground.
So those are your credentials to be president?
That's what I tell myself, because otherwise I just can't believe I'm here.
Well, it's great. I have to remark on this jacket. I mean, I mentioned it actually this morning. Clearly it's red for Ruth. It's velvet with lots of sort of black braid. I mean, I did mention maybe it had appeared in an episode of Blackadder, but what's the history of this jacket?
You've been fondling it in a way that almost made me want to slap you. I bought it for some dinner where it was, or a party where it seemed appropriate, and I forgot all about it. And then the other night, Andrew Strauss had a dinner at the Royal Hospital at Chelsea for the Ruth Strauss Foundation, and asked me to come and do some, question him and Mark Taylor on stage and do some hosting. And I thought, I'll wear something red, and I looked through my clothes and found this, amazingly not moth-eaten.
No.
And so here it is. Now it's my Ruth Strauss frock.
Which is, I mean, when you look around and you see how much red is here today, and I'm looking at Andrew actually up on the screen at the moment. It's been a very, very emotional day, isn't it?
Immensely moving. It's a remarkable charity. We often think about how money needs to go into research against cancer and other diseases, or to support people in their last years. But it's so important to remember that the real victims in some ways are those left behind, especially children. And in the case of Andrew and Ruth, their two sons, Luca and Sam, that's the thing Ruth thought. She thought, I've got to try and prepare them for the fact that I'm not going to be there. And there's no way I know really how to do this. She used her own intelligence and her own sensitivity to do it well, but she wanted her legacy to be a support network for all kinds of people who are left without their parent, and who to be prepared for it. It's a wonderful thing.
And it's wonderful that sport can get involved in that sort of thing.
Cricket is great like that. I mean, he went to see Glenn McGrath, Andrew, when Ruth died, and Glenn had started this amazing thing in honour of his wife, who died of breast cancer, this Pink Day that goes on and is so well supported by the cricketers. And there's been another when Bob Willis, the beloved Bob Willis, went to prostate cancer, something that I suffered from a few years ago. His widow, Laurie, started the Bob Willis Foundation or Trust for prostate cancer, and it's great because that's at Edgbaston, where Bob Willis, reigns supreme for Warwickshire as well as for England. And these things show, I think, and this is something we might come on to, that cricket and cricket lovers are a very, very warm and emotional group of people. And there is, as so often is in British life, this strange disconnect between the image of a sport or an institution and the reality of it. Now, I'm not going to deny that the report on the racism and the classism and the misogyny in British cricket that came out the other day from this special group that was commissioned by the English Cricket Board to look into the game, I'm not going to deny that had some really tough truths in it, because I've been, trying to suggest this for some years. I gave a lecture, it's called the Spirit of Cricket Lecture, named after Colin Cowdrey. I tried to make these same points about how the game really must evolve. It's always been a game that's been a few steps behind the culture, if one can call it that. In some ways, and this sounds a bit frivolous, and I don't mean it to, in some ways it's a bit like the royal family. Cricket can appear to be a fusty, old-fashioned, pointless, ridiculous, ritualistic institution, but it has always survived by evolving just in time to keep going. When I was a young man, and you were, there was still, at this ground, Lords, a gentleman versus players match.
Yep.
And it was still traditional on the match card for amateur public school gentlemen, so-called, who played cricket, to be called Mr. or the Honourable in front of their name on the and whereas it would say Truman FS because he was a professional.
Yep.
And they travel on a different class on the boat. You know, I mean, that's in the 60s, the same time the Beatles were rising up. They obviously had to go. But there was fuss. People said the equivalent of woke then. They said, oh, it's a tradition. Well, tradition is great, but traditions are made by new generations and they evolve. And there is no place, obviously, for racism and for classism. When I first came to this ground as a boy, I felt looked down on. You do see these cherry-faced poltroons in striped blazers, and they look formidable, and they look sort of disgusted by the world. And there is I'm not talking about the majority of this club or any cricket lover, but there's a cohort of cricket lovers who seem to be stuck in their school days, for whom cricket is what they remember. And it isn't what it can become. It's a great and extraordinary game. And if you show a child a bat and a ball, you show a girl or a boy a bat and a ball, and you draw up some stumps against a wall or on a tree trunk, give them the vague idea, give me the ball, give me the bat. They want to play. It's such a beautiful thing to do. And that's when the problems begin. That's when you don't have the money for the lessons, you don't have the money for the kit, for any sense of getting a ground together and a team to play a slightly more organised form of the game. And the advantage goes to people at private schools, people with richer parents, people with a tradition of the game. Same is slightly true of tennis, and I've worked with Tony Hawks to try and get on these tennis courts in public parks that should be played for free. But with cricket, it's even more difficult. There's more equipment and you need more people. But the idea that people think, even if it isn't true, sometimes it is true, sometimes it's just a misapprehension, that they might think that there is snobbery, elitism in the game is such a disaster for cricket. And we know, you've played it all your life and I've watched it all my life, we know that most cricketers are absolutely, it's the game that matters, it's the communality. Everybody in cricket is an equal. The only thing that makes you elite is your skill, that makes you a century maker or a great wicket taker. The rest is irrelevant, and whatever your race or gender, cricket belongs to us all. And we have to take note of this report. And Lords and the MCC have been trying to do that for some time, and I've been trying to do my bit as well with the foundation, which we have. The MCC Foundation has these hubs up and down the country. 3,000 young people have been given equipment and training and help to find equipment and nets and things like that. We've tried to persuade all the private schools in England to open up their facilities, their incredible facilities, to the people of the girls and boys of the countryside around them. And it's going to take time. Everything in this country takes too long. But as long as the direction of travel is correct and we're not putting people off.
Well, the MCC was criticised for like the Eton Harrow game as showing, well, elitism, if you like. I mean, have you found it comfortable being president of the club and some of those attitudes that you talked about? Are you trying to change things actively yourself?
Yeah.
And have you only got a year?
I've only got a year, and it's not an executive or administrative position. I describe it as a cross between a regimental goat and the Queen Mother in some respects. It's quite ceremonial and ambassadorial. But as it happens, when I joined, the committee had made a decision, or thought they had, to get rid of the Eton Harrow and Oxford and Cambridge matches and to replace them with what they call the Road to Lords. So different universities have a tournament throughout the early summer, and the winner, the two finalists come to battle it out at Lords. And it might be that Oxford or Cambridge would win in the first round or two, and it might be that Eton or Harrow might get to the final. But what parent would be as proud of their child if they were only playing at Lords because they paid for them to go to that school?
Yeah.
And anyway, when I was appointed president, I had to do some press, and I was asked what I thought about the decision to abandon the Eton Harrow match, and I said I thought it was a very good decision. And then I was called up to be told, actually, we're pulling back on it because the members disapprove. And so then I got scowled at by some members and accused by, the writer in the Telegraph of being woke. Because this is the problem in this country. You have to walk a very narrow corridor.
How do you define woke? Yourself.
The word is very annoying. As I say, it's a narrow corridor between being woke and being a hypocrite. If you try and suggest that things need to change and evolve, you can be called woke. If at the same time you are president of the MCC, people say you're a hypocrite. Why are you belonging to a club that has a 30-year waiting list and the majority of people are still men? And I'll say, well, yes, that's probably a fair point. It is a difficult cultural agony that you have to undergo. I could say, hey, I'm perhaps the first Jewish person to be president of the MCC, certainly the first person who's first male to be married to a man who's president of the MCC. So I tick a few boxes, but I admit I don't tick some others. And I always come over. I know I can hear my voice speaking into the microphone. I know I sound like a very plummy, old-fashioned English kind of person, and not much I can do about that. But I am anxious that when people come to this ground, they feel really welcome, that they're welcomed in the spirit of cricket, and that their place here is absolutely, by buying a ticket, by coming to watch a match, they belong. And also that the young people who want to go try our indoor nets and want to see if they can, find a way of connecting with cricket through the MCC as a player, or through the MCC Foundation, through one of our hubs, that they are absolutely actively welcome. We're going to have women's ODIs here every year for the next 8 years. We're going to have one on Saturday the 8th. We're going to have the ODI, the T20, Ashes T20. We were criticised for not having an Ashes test here for women, but that's a bit unkind. That's one I won't accept because it's not our call. It's the ECB's call.
Yes.
And we would love to have a test match here for women. Absolutely love it. And it's also true, of course, that if we suck up all the test matches for women, some of the other grounds say, oh, snobby MCC gets all the test matches. You can't quite win in that regard. Yeah. But no, it's so important. And if anybody listening wants to get their children into cricket, I urge them to find out ways of doing it through the MCC Foundation. There will be people who are anxious. We had, it was such a great thing during the Ireland Test. We have these community heroes from all over Britain and even France who volunteer, who spend hours of their life bringing cricket to areas where it isn't really celebrated. In inner city, Bradford was one case. This other guy who was amazing was teaching refugee children in northern France who were in holding camps, going crazy with nothing to do. He went in and he taught them cricket, and it caught like wildfire. And so he has this fabulous cricket club in northern France. So there are people out there who are making it their mission.
Yes.
Because cricket, when people love cricket, they love it with, like me, with a kind of passion that's quite hard to explain. And we want everybody else to love it with us. There goes the bell, 5 minutes to play.
I haven't finished yet because I want to get your thoughts, because you do have some unorthodox views, perhaps on cricket technique sometimes. I remember a few years ago bumping into you suggesting the best way to play against the Australian fast bowlers was to go out without pads on to make them cross. So therefore, Bazball, Stephen, where does that sit with you?
Well, like everybody, I'm incredibly excited to see results-orientated, really aggressive batting and so on. But also, I'm, again, a slight hypocrite, because when I see a decision that I think might mitigate against a more reasonable outcome, then I'm going, why did you declare so early? Root was full of runs. He would have made another 60 by the look of it, or possibly. And I know it's nice to bowl at them at the end of the day, but it's also in the morning, if they've had to sleep over a big score, they would have been nervous too, and bother. So, I'm conflicted, I think, is the answer. Right. But I love the fact that cricket and test matches have been so exciting lately. They really have. I mean, that Edgbaston match, we could have won it. The fact, we can't really say our strategy was wrong, because 2 catches and stumping, and we would have won it clearly. So, it's the little things. that make all the difference. And that's the beauty of Test cricket. There's this wide sweeping arc of a narrative, which is not just the 5-day match, but it's the series. So you have to think, should they play Bazball? Should they play Bazball, do you think, now, at the risk of losing the Test? Or should they, if it comes to it, should they play for a draw for the sake of the series?
I've got to my right here a quite extraordinary gentleman who's a guest of yours today, Stephen.
We're so proud to have him.
I think you should introduce Jonathan Mills and why he's here.
You may have read the story in the Times. This is one of the great heroes of cricket this year. Jonathan Mills was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer back at the beginning of the year. He's had a struggle trying to accommodate the ghastly therapies, and he made the decision that perhaps he wouldn't. His great passions in life are sport, rugby and cricket. And he decided, although he has this terrible diagnosis, rather than sort of, weltering in self-pity, he would give himself a good game of cricket. You take up the story.
Come on, Jonathan, it's lovely to see you. And welcome to Test Match. You can. Welcome to Test Match Special. Come on, tell us your story, because it is remarkable.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, it's amazing to hear Stephen know my story for a start, to be honest with you. And I was humbled when I entered the box and he literally said everything he knew, which is amazing. So I got cancer, I got diagnosed in January and had treatment. Had a tumour removed the size of a tennis ball. Wow. Burnt a hole in my colon. Lost 1.75 metres of my colon. Then went into chemotherapy after a month's rest, went in for chemotherapy for 3 months, which, believe me, gets worse and worse the more you have it. Unfortunately, that didn't work, and the cancer has now spread to my lungs, to my stomach, and still in my liver. So I got that prognosis the Monday before the Saturday, saw my oncologist, and on the Tuesday I made myself available for selection. So
Playing for whom?
Playing for Brookwheel Cricket Club. I play for the twos. I do normally play for the first team, but obviously, I'm not a prima. I like to think I'm not a prima donna. I'm available. Just pick me for whoever you want. And they gave me a game, went out in the twos, which was very kind of them, because they probably knew I wasn't going to be potentially at my best. And skipper said, "John, do you want to open the batting?" I went, "All right then." Happy when the first one went, because nobody wants to get a duck.
No.
And then the first 4 went, and I thought, okay. They had a very interesting opening bowler. I must have been a ringer, because he was spitting him in Shoaib Akhtar and tried to take my head off. Right. So I called for my helmet, which I never normally wear, and then proceeded to enjoy myself. And
how many did you get?
I got 110 in 123 balls, wow. 21 boundaries. So it was fun.
Yeah. You must have been exhausted.
I was exhausted. I had a little tear at 50 because I was so pleased just to contribute. And my opening band partner, he had a tear too. And then by the time I got to 100, I was just like, I was exhausted. But I got to a point, as you do, I mean, we all enjoy our cricket, is you get to a point and you go, I'm a bit close to 100 now. I've got to do this now, to fail at 87 or something is not good. Is 87 the Australian number, I think?
It is.
Yeah. So I thought, I've got to do it now. So, so to get over the line was fantastic. And then just hit a couple of fours and then horrendous agricultural hoik out of exhaustion, and I was back in the pavilion, which I was very glad to be.
Are you going to play again?
I am definitely going to play. I'm playing in an old boys cricket event called Cricket Festival at my old school, Wolverhampton Grammar School. So I'll go and play that in a couple of weeks. Which would be great to see everybody. And then after that, and I'm sure all this celebrity rubbish will have calmed down. And not rubbish, it's lovely. I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it, I have to say. But this will have all calmed down, and I'll just get back to playing cricket for as long as I can. And as long as my other half lets me.
Yeah, well, good luck. It's a remarkable story. Good luck. It's lovely to have met you.
Now, you see, Stephen, that's why you want to be president of the MCC. You can invite people like this to your hospitality box.
Well, it's lovely. And it's great to see you, Stephen. And thanks you for your company at tea time. There we go. The sun's shining. Well played. That's a very moving story indeed, Jonathan.